guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to go over an email that was sent from a subscriber. This is from a guy who sent me the email, which was behind the video I did the day after Christmas, which was titled, Nurse Has a Meltdown on Facebook After Her Husband Dumps Her for Hooking Up with Every Guy at the Hospital. And that story, guys, if you remember, this nurse he was working with, this guy travels around, and he's married, I might add. This nurse was hitting on him left and right, really trying to get him. Okay, and he thought she was single, and all her female nurses that she was friends with led him to believe that she was single, but she wasn't, and she was hooking up with every dude at the hospital. He wasn't interested in her, and eventually she got caught, okay, and she was crying her eyes out and singing the blues and doing drama on Facebook because her husband obviously found out about what she did and kicked her ass to the curb, and now she was crying because she couldn't make her mortgage payments and all that. She's going to lose the house and the kids and all that. Meanwhile, she was cheating left and right in this poor guy. Now what we have is another story from this guy who shares about another nurse that he worked with who was cheating on her guy and eventually got busted. And just to show you that this obviously isn't, this stereotype seems to be right in the money. I mean, the stories I've heard about these gals that are nurses, I mean, holy crap. I mean, next time I got to go to the doctor, the hospital, I'm going to definitely see things differently. So this story, it is an update to the other one. I wanted to connect this because it's the same guy telling the story, but this is just another entertaining tale, which I think you guys will enjoy and find quite entertaining. I swear to God, whenever I do a video that deals with the naughty nurses or naughty teachers, boom, it is view central. But they're entertaining, and let's be honest here, a lot of you guys come here for the entertaining stories. But before I get into this guy, I want to mention, I've been saying this all week, I'm now pushing Instagram and locals. So if you guys happen to be on Instagram or in locals, by all means come on by and follow me or join Strong Successful Male. I'm really making a push into social media this year to really grow the business in a different direction. So if you can do that, I'd really appreciate it. All right, on with the story. He starts out saying, pre-notes, I'm still working in Texas at the same hospital. This story is not related to part one. The hospital that I was sent to had a lot of nurses coming and going. Some nurses hated it and left, while others got fired. So new folks are coming and going all the time. This is the story of my favorite firing. He says, at the hospital that I was in the rapid response team about 75% of the time, which means we have to respond to all the codes and see very critical patients. It is a step higher than an ICU nurse. It's my favorite job. It allows me to know everyone and move around. He says, I don't like staying in one spot. So I got to know everyone and their stories. Dude, you got a very difficult job. I respect that. Thank you for what you do. He says, now for me, I'm married 11 years now, and my wife comes with me. She's also an ICU nurse, and we've been working together, working as travel nurses for over 2 years. And he says in parentheses, I know, I can see SSM shaking his head. Bro, you follow my channel, you listen to my stories, and so I'm going to trust at this point, you know what to look out for. You know to trust your gut if something seems off. You know to trust to look out for red flags. And you obviously know that in a relationship, don't put on a pedestal. You as the man, be the leader. Act like a man. Don't act like a pussy. And I'm sure your marriage will be all right. I really hope it goes well for you. But remember, pay attention to all the things that you learn in my stories, you know. And yeah, you're going to get some heat because you're married. And yes, because you're married to a nurse and you're going to get the jokes there. But, you know, I trust everything's going well. So it is what it is. Anyhow, he says, so let me tell you the story of Michelle. Michelle the nurse. I was doing one of my random patrols. This is when I will walk around the entire hospital and get a feel about what patients I need to keep an eye on because they may be close to death or require more intervention to maintain life. Since I walk around the hospital, I got to know most everyone and got a feel for the new people, etc. It must make your job a lot easier where, yes, you have these intense things you got to deal with, life and death situations, but yet you meet a lot of people, a lot of stories, a lot of entertainment to definitely keep you calm, you know? So I get to the third floor, and I ask the charge nurse any patients I should put on my list to keep an eye out on. She asked to take a look at patient in number 16. So I head over and take a look. I talk to the nurse of this patient and get the basics, etc., etc. I have not met her, and she tells me it's her second day. We spent about 10 minutes talking and introducing ourselves. Her name is Michelle. She's 23 years old and from out of state. And boys, let me tell you, she's super cute. Not hot, but the girl next door type of cute. Well, the stereotype about the old girl next door, that has definitely become less and less, because that type is a little more, she's cute, she's likable, you know, all that, and obviously has a level of being kind of a, you know, actually like old school values, so to speak, not being like a lot of the gals are today. So the old girl next door is definitely an endangered species. And I might add, the girl next door, and he mentioned here that she's cute but not super hot, and he has that girl next door type of feel. Well, she probably has been heard that a lot of times, so therefore needs to show that she's not the girl next door. And as you're going to see, guys, she's not the girl next door. She admits that this is a first travel assignment and is a little nervous. Pay attention to that. The first travel assignment. The first time she can get away from her life and her man. She's a little flirty, and yes, I'm enjoying the attention, but I know it's time to play my classic wife introduction line. He says, "Have you met my wife, Linda?" Since my wife works at the same place as me, it's easy to use that line. She gets the hint and stops being as flirty, but still friendly. Dude, it doesn't matter if you're married. If women find you attractive and charming, there are some that absolutely do not give a shit that you're married, okay? Believe me, there are a lot of gals that, in a way, they see that as a challenge, because they figure, hey, you know, if he's talking to me, and they misinterpret you just being friendly to actually being liking her, they figure, hey, open season, you know, because they just don't care. And, you know, it's like, what's that saying that Al Bundy said? Don't try to understand women. Women understand women, and they hate each other. Okay? So, it doesn't matter if you're married. It doesn't matter if you're in a relationship. If they find you attractive, they think you're hot, they think you're charming, they want you, they don't care. And I know many of you guys have probably experienced this. And if there are any women watching me here, they would probably reluctantly nod their heads like, yeah, some women do that. Magically, she got a boyfriend from her home state that she only brings up after I bring up my wife. So she's flirting and carrying on. This is her first assignment away from the boyfriend, but only after you mentioned that you have a wife does she mention the boyfriend. He says, no big deal, right? We will see. So time goes on, and a few weeks later, I notice Michelle gets picked up and dropped off in the back by the same guy. I didn't think much of it until I was walking by and she kissed him before she left the car. It was a little dark and she didn't notice my presence. So wait a second, she has a boyfriend and she's a traveling nurse, she's away, she's already got a dude dropping her off and she's kissing him. It's like, if you're gonna cheat, break up. End of story. But nobody ever does that. Well, not in these stories, because it's easier to have the cake and eat it too. That poor guy, he probably has no idea. So a few days later, I was doing a random patrol, and I got to the 3rd floor and we started chatting. Being a red pill guy, I wanted to know if it was her boyfriend. He says in parentheses, yes, I know, none of my business. So I talked about my wife being married and working together to get her to talk about her boyfriend. Works like a charm. She goes on about how amazing he is and how much she misses him and hopes to be married and start a family with him one day. Well, I bet you that part isn't a lie. She probably hopes to be married to him and misses him and wants to start a family with him, because probably she's 23, I might add, so she's fresh out of college, she's in her prime, and she probably, yeah, she wants to get married one day, but she's having her last roll in the hay with the bad boys. Okay, he's probably the nice guy that she settles with, knows that she's going to marry, and knows that he's not going to cheat on her. We'll pay the bills, we'll get the house in the suburbs, raise the kids, but she still wants to have her fun with Chad and Tyrone, and probably what happens at the Texas ICU happens at the Texas ICU. That type of attitude. Welcome to today's world, guys. She has no idea that I know about the guy that takes her to work and drops her off. I just tell her I'm happy for her and hope things work out. Well, sadly, in these types of stories, things actually do work out for the girl, because these things go on behind the scenes and the guy has no idea. Or if she gets caught, she pulls the waterworks, says that you weren't paying enough attention to me, blah, 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 and the guy's like, okay, and gives her another chance, and she gets away scot-free. And then does it again down the road. She is starting to get noticed by one of the doctors and other nurses. Dr. Chad is 45 years old. He's a good doctor, but a shitty person. He's a doctor I would want to take care of me. However, I would never invite him to my house, and I would not trust him around my wife. Yeah, I've met doctors in my life that were They were assholes, but they knew their stuff. At the end of the day, if I had to have surgery, I'd rather be operating on a guy that has no personality and is kind of a jerk, but is a master at what he does. He's the best, versus a guy that was the nicest guy in the world, but not very good. He says, however, I would never invite him to my house, blah, blah, blah. Dr. Chad got a reputation for hooking up with a ton of the traveling nurses. God, he's that guy. I know many of the nurses that he hooked up with. I make fun of him because he got an STD COVID by hooking up with a nurse with COVID. He knows I talk to everyone, and he wanted in on the details of this Michelle. What a scumbag. I mean, really. And you know what? Because he's got that reputation, notice that he keeps hooking up with all these nurses. Okay? Because it sounds absurd, but it's like, oh, well, all the other girls want it. Well, I want a piece of that action too. Meanwhile, if none of them wanted him, if none of them wanted him, then of course the newcomers wouldn't want him either. I told him that she's got a boyfriend, but she looks like trouble. His eyes already told me that he made up his mind to go for it. I just told him to be careful. She's a walking red flag. Dr. Chad makes a move and secures himself a date with Michelle the next time they are both off. This is a conquest Dr. Chad will miss out on. Well, Dr. Chad will have plenty of opportunities in the future because that's what Dr. Chads do. He says, COVID is starting to wind down in Texas and our patient population has gone down. The hospital closed a floor of the hospital for maintenance. It's about 1 o'clock in the morning and I see Michelle and a traveling nurse, Dave, being escorted out by security. How interesting. What could have happened? They were escorted to their vehicles and we never saw them again. Rumors were flying all over the place on what happened. Keep in mind that Nurse Michelle was recently hired. This isn't too far into her job there at the hospital. My security guard buddy John texted me and said, "You gotta see this." I went to the command station to see what was up. He showed me a video of Michelle and Dave going into the closed floor and entering a room. John told me he knew what was going on and he waited 5 minutes to make sure they were in the middle of banging before busting them. John told me he walked to the door as quietly as possible. He opened the door as fast as he could and caught Dave blowing her back out, bent over the counter. He called for extra security and had their things gathered up. They were escorted out of there, right out of the building, and they didn't talk to the manager or anyone. You know, there's all these shows that have been going on for years. These, you know, back in the 90s was ER, then it was Grey's Anatomy, and I don't know the rest, but shows like this. And I had a personal training client a couple of years ago. She was a doctor, and she was cool. And she told me, like, oh, those shows are a bunch of BS, blah, blah, blah. It's like, sure. If they're all such BS with the whole romance stuff and stuff going on there, then how come you hear all these stories all the time that seem to happen? Yeah, unless maybe she herself was, you know, as a young intern or just starting out. Who the hell knows? You never know. But anyhow, what a shocker. Going into the little side room and hooking up. He continues, there was an email the next day that sent out by the hospital to address the situation. It did not address the sex or the names of the people that are being fired. It just said 2 employees were terminated for entering off-limit areas of the hospital, and employees will be terminated for entering closed units of the hospital. And I'm sure that's part of the case, but really the termination was because those 2 were getting it on in the... and remember, this girl... Now, he mentioned the story started off, it was her second day. Now, this can't be too far in the future. And boom. Just like that. She already has a dude dropping her off and she's kissing. Now she's hooking up with another dude. And she probably would have been hooking up with the Dr. Chad, as he called him, soon enough. I got money that Michelle went back to her boyfriend, lied her pants off, and is still with him. That poor guy. She probably went home and made this bullshit story up and the guy had no idea. He says, poor guy has no idea. People really do have a mindset out of sight, out of mind, or it's not cheating if I live in a different zip code. Thanks, SSM, for all you do. I have a few more stories I'd love to share that I've come across as a traveling nurse. Part 3, Dr. Chad breaking up marriages. Well, bro, thank you for your story. As always, we find this very entertaining. By all means, keep them coming. Keep up the good stories. You know, I'll definitely use them because I know the guys here enjoy those types of stories. So, all right, guys, that is it for today. Be sure to comment down below and what you think about this. And guys, as I just said to this guy, also, if you have a great story you'd like to share, things that happened to you, or things that you've observed throughout your life, your job, whatever that pertain to the things I talk about in this channel, by all means, email me, strongsuccessfulmale@gmail.com, and I'll definitely cover it down the road. Like I said many times, I get so many emails, guys, from you guys. Just bear with me, because sometimes I can get them quicker than others. But just make them easy for me to read. Okay, if they're all jammed together, I can't do them. But give me time and I'll get to them. And this also goes for good articles. Any good articles that relate to what I talk about here on this channel, send them over here. It makes my job easier when I have constant content. And the more content I get from you guys sending to me, the more I can crank out videos, and definitely try to get 2 a day out here. And be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. And I'll catch you next time.